Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and welcome to the pod where we chat, argue, and wax poetic about the movies, the books, and the games that we love, hate, or that are simply worth talking about. All movies, games, and books have something to say, and we enjoy trying to analyze what they capture. Welcome to the Shatter After. I am Brandon Alvarado, the Scarlet Fan here, and I am joined by my co-host Mike Thomas.
Fate only binds you if you let it.
And the reason he spouts these words is because today we are doing a special Shatter After episode on the game of the decade, in my opinion, God of War Ragnarok. Creative director Cory Balrog and the whole Santa Monica Studio PlayStation Games team put this amazing sequel to 2018's God of War together. And I just finished the game and I cannot wait to talk about it. There's so much that happens, there's so much that occurs, and the artistry and the masterfulness and everything involved in this game is so amazing that I felt that we needed to not just have the usual friend discussion. We needed to take a deep dive into this game. We're going to talk about the characters. We're going to talk about the cast. We're going to talk about scenes. We're going to talk about the story. We're going to talk about the gameplay. This is a game review, and it's going to be a lot of spoilers. So if you have not played or finished God of War Ragnarok, this is not the pod for you. Once you finish it, come back. But if you haven't finished it, trust me, you do not want to be spoiled in the amazing game that this is. So we're telling you, I'm looking at the camera right now, back off.
It's a special game because remember the only other proper video game review we've ever done here is The Last of Us.
Right.
And so the fact that we're coming back to talk about God of War Ragnarok should let you know this was a big deal.
And it's not just the fact, and I kind of want to make a point to this. I mean, both of us, are mostly PlayStation gamers, a little bit of a Nintendo. We don't play Xbox. I mean, not because it's a bad console or anything. It's just not our jam. But
Yeah.
we love stories, and one of the things that PlayStation games as a whole, most of the first party games made by PlayStation games are very narrative driven experiences, and and most of them, if not all of them, are top tier or amazing, which is why we covered The Last of Us, and which is why we're coming now to talk about God of War Ragnarok. So throughout the entirety of this review, we're going to talk a little bit about 2018 God of War, which set up Ragnarok, and then we're going to talk about Ragnarok because what an achievement in video game creation and storytelling it was. There's so much to talk about this. Now, Mike, I'm going to start with you. You
Oh yeah.
told me that you finished this game a month ago, and because you value experiences, you have been you become a shut-in. You haven't
Yeah.
spoken about this with anybody, and now you finally have someone to talk to. So tell me, what is God of War to you? What's your history with the franchise, and what was God of War Ragnarok? What was that experience for you?
Yeah, so my history with the franchise is God of War 2018. I played it in like 2019, 2020-ish. Um that was my first introduction to the franchise, and then from there I fell in love with it. Started playing and researching all of the older games. And I love Ragnarok because 2018 did feel like a proper reboot, right? In the sense where everything happened, but since Kratos is existing in Norse mythology as opposed to Greek mythology, it's an easy jumping in point for anybody to dive into the franchise that way. Ragnarok, though, it takes all of Kratos' history, all of his experiences, and say, hey, this is still God of War, what, 5? We're going to use every bit of information you know about Kratos and just infuse everything into this game. And what I love about the development of Ragnarok is that the development team, they said they wanted to make this the best game possible. They could have floated some ideas to a third game to end the trilogy, and they were like, no, we're just going to dump it all here because we want to make this the best experience they possibly can. And so I love how the game is taking everything we knew about Ragnarok from 2018 and we're seeing it develop, but we're seeing it develop in new and interesting ways, right? We see Tyr and we see all of these murals and the legend that Tyr is going to become and that he was. And then you get the realization by the time you get to the end, I can finally mention this, that wasn't Tyr. That was Kratos. Like, him causing Ragnarok, him defeating Odin, him standing side by side with Atreus, that was not Tyr, even though by all accounts we would think it was Tyr because he's that mythology's god of war. But it was actually our boy Kratos who fulfilled the prophecies, even went against some of the prophecies. And I think that's what makes this such a fascinating story.
True. One of the things that I think was so interesting, and I think it's a way of the narrative and the story team of the writers. Again, the writing in this game is phenomenal, and I'm not just saying in terms of the main story, in the way that all the side quests and all the character interactions intertwine in passive dialogue and in main story dialogue and spill into the story. It's a phenomenal tapestry, which is I think it's one of the greatest achievements in games. Period. Like you have games like the Elder Scrolls, which is a huge popular MMORPG and SPS RPG, right? Not FPS, but first person RPG, right? Which is
Yeah.
one of the greatest RPGs of all time. But a lot of the storytelling in Elder Scrolls is like Fallout and like Bioshock, which is like you have to dig into the lore, you have to read it. It's not something that's literally something that it is presented to you organically. You have to find it if you want to learn the lore, which is totally fine. It's a very Dungeons and Dragons aspect, I think, in a way. Like if you're not actively doing a quest, you're not going to learn about it unless you research it on your own or read a book or whatever, right?
Right.
But everything here feels alive, and every character feels alive because of that intertwined tapestry that the dialogue creates for us. Like the idea that almost every time you approach Brock and Sindri, you can have a conversation with them
And a
about.
different conversation too. It doesn't even repeat, really.
Yes. It doesn't repeat. It reacts to whoever, whatever companion you're with. It reacts to whatever quest you're actively doing.
Yeah.
And it reacts to whatever's going on with the actual story conversation, which again creates this sense of cohesion that even if we are sorry, fixing the mic, even if we are jumping in and out of the main storylines to do side quests, you never feel that you left the main storyline. You feel that all your side quests are built in and spilling into what the main story is.
Yeah.
Everything is everything is focusing on the same goal at the end of the day, which to me was very very fascinating. And one of the things that and just to give you an example of something that blew my mind, like if the whole ending sequence wasn't amazing enough, right? Towards
Yeah.
the end, I'm gonna ask you a question. Did you do the Sigrun's curse quest in Midgard?
Ooh, it's been a while. Which one is that one again? Just to
That's the one where you find out the history of Sigrun.
No, I haven't done that one yet.
So if you do that quest at the very end of the game, when you're leaving the cave, and you see all the credits, and you're passing by
Right.
Hithesvilger and Mimir. You've passed by Hilda and the elves, and then you go to the room where Atreus was laid, where the three Valkyries are.
Yep.
Kratos and Mimir say, "I'm sorry for your family," because in that quest you find out what happened to her family.
Wow.
Yes, it's to me. I was like, "What?" And it's funny because I was talking to them as part of the story. I was about to leave, and suddenly Kratos turns back and says, "Before we go, we want to say." And like Mimir literally says, if you could have told me what happened to your family, you could have told me about the person that you loved and how they killed your like. It was like what and the game's over. Like the game is literally over. Like the main game is over.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you hear that, and I still see the tapestry, even in that part of the game. And then when you leave the hold, right, where everybody's, and you open those doors, you get that big screen that says Beyond Ragnarok. Like, hey, there's still game to be played.
There's so much game to be played.
Like, you still, like, you've already defeated Ragnarok. You've conquered fate. So now you decide your fate. And it literally lets you play out a little bit of the path that Faye set out for Kratos, which is
Yeah.
something so interesting. Which I haven't played it. That's where I stopped. I haven't gone beyond, but still, the idea that in the center of this hack and slash game, the narrative is the most important thing that they paid attention to create a world that feels lived in, that feels, that flows, that evolves, that grows. Like, and to think that you can play the game throughout, and it's like, if you don't do any side quests, you can probably go from start to finish. You can probably finish the game in 20 hours, right? That's like a fair,
About 2022, maybe so.
right? That's a
Yeah.
fair assessment. You can go through the whole story, and it's amazing. But the fact that you take the time to do side quests, it enriches the experience because everything's connected, as opposed to being. Because, for example, Horizon Zero Dawn, which I love, and Horizon Forbidden West, which you and I kept having conversations because it took me like 80 hours to finish it.
Yeah.
But what I like about Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West is that all the side quests were phenomenal, but they don't have the level of integration that all the side quests that God of War has,
Yeah.
especially Ragnarok, which to me was surprising. Um,
That's one thing I really love about Ragnarok. You mentioned early on too that the situations change based on which companion you have with you too. And so and I think it's Alfheim, and you're releasing the Alfufa, I think is the name of it.
yes, the
So
Havkufa.
Hafkava.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I released the first one. I don't know how you played. I released the first one with Atreus. But I didn't go back and finish that quest until the post game, until Ragnarok was over. And I
Nice.
feel like my dialogue was probably vastly different from yours because we
You did it with Freya.
unleash. Yeah, I did it with Freya, and she's like,
Interesting.
"Why are you doing this, Kratos?" And he's just like, "Because Atreus would have wanted me to finish this job." And I'm just like, "Oh my gosh!" And as I'm playing this, I'm like, they wouldn't have known that I finished this quest after not being with Atreus. So I'm like, that means there has to be so many different variations of dialogue. Because what if I did it with Freya before Atreus left? I'm sure that dialogue might be different too. And so it's just like,
It
I'm gonna
gives
play this game like 4 times. I swear.
it opens a lot of replayability, which is so interesting. Now I'm
Yeah.
thinking, now that you say that, I found it fascinating. What if I did all the side quests in Vanaheim with Freya as opposed to Atreus? And it's funny because there's one particular quest in Vanaheim that I haven't finished, which is the one for the Huntress. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
done that one, so I want to see the interaction there. Which again, wow, you just blew my mind. Which
Yeah.
I didn't think about that, but then again, that's how much they planned in the term that the player decides the fate of the story and decides the fate of the characters and the way the story goes. So it gives you that sense of ownership of the experience, which, talking about ownership of the experience, right? One of the fascinating things that God of War did, which to me was a very particular decision that surprised me kind of, but also made me very happy. Did you notice that they didn't change anything in the battle system? The,
Yeah.
the battle system was exactly the same as God of War 2018. They literally didn't lose. Is Fafnir? Um, they didn't. They didn't do anything. They didn't change the battle system. I was so surprised. The only thing they did is they expanded the options by giving you companions.
It's
Be-
one of those things
yeah,
where I was playing because I replayed God of War right into Ragnarok.
nice.
And they didn't change the battle system, but that's what threw me off because I was leveled up. I had all my gear, I had all my weapons, I had all my moves, and it's like, and you're back to level 1. And that screwed me up for like the first 5-6 hours of the game because I had to relearn how to play within the means
Fair.
that they gave me, bare
Yeah,
minimum.
yeah.
And it's like, if you change the battle system, I probably would have had an easier time adjusting from where I was in God of War.
I can understand that because when you finish God of War 2018, you're like top tier Kratos, right? So the fact that you get a downgrade, I totally get it. Like you have none of the summons with with Atreus and all that stuff. But I love how they understood. They had the courage to understand, guys. This works. We can't touch this.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you think that you have to innovate to make it better. And sometimes something that works doesn't need innovation, just expansion, which is what they decided to do. Because the one thing is to innovate, one thing is to expand. They went with expansion. How did they expand it? They gave you different kinds of companions. The fact that I was able to play with Freya as a companion, the fact that I was able to play with Brock as a companion was fascinating.
With
But
Sindri too from the Atreus side, right?
and that's where I was going. But the fact that we're able to play as Atreus,
Yeah.
that was like one of the biggest surprises, which at the same time, I don't know why it was a surprise, but I found it so fascinating because it not only speaks to the different dimensions of gameplay, which that's where they expanded. Because in reality, even though, yes, it's a bow and arrow and whatever, but you're still doing the same mechanics. It's just
Right.
that it's more bow and arrow. I love that he had a rage meter because he is Kratos' son. I love that it became the shape shifting thing. I love how we delved into his giant heritage. um, I loved everything about it. There was so much of the battle system was great, and especially I love how easily the handoff between each different playstyle was,
Yeah.
especially in the final Ragnarok sequence. Like nothing feels forced. And by the way, the fact that most of the battle transitions and the story transitions have no edits and are just flow was perfect. Death's
Yeah.
kiss.
The director for this game, Eric Williams, he was like, we wanted to keep the seamless transition from 2018. He's like, but it gets harder because we have so many different mechanics in this game that they contemplated cutting it, and he's just like, no, Corey wouldn't want us to cut it. And I think, again, testament to everybody at Sony Santa Monica, because Cory Barlog had hardly no involvement with the development of this game because he's working on the next project. And so it's like they were able to keep everything we loved about 2018 and just amplify it up to 11. I kind of want to touch on some of the story beats though, because you mentioned Atreus' shape shifting ability. How we're going back a while now, beginning of the game, you're fighting that bear. What were your thoughts when you were pummeling and it turned out to be Atreus?
I had no idea. And how powerful, again, from the beginning, a testament to the PS5 graphic ability,
Yeah.
a testament to the new innovations in motion capture for video games. But Christopher Judge is Kratos. King, bro. King. And that moment where he's literally fighting for his life against this bear, you're doing the rage stun grapple to finish him off, and it becomes Atreus. And you can see how broken Kratos becomes to understand that he was almost about to off his son.
Kill his own child again.
Yes. Yes. And I love and the thing that broke me the most is all the moments where like in one side Kratos is the man's man, right? Tough, decisive, a wall, right? But I
Yeah.
love that the wave of emotion that breaks through that, you see it in the face's motion capture when his mouth is trembling because he's holding back the tears, or he's holding back, just because. And it's not that he's holding back because he's a man. Like it's not that kind of false sense of manhood, like men don't cry, don't nothing at all. Because one of the
Right.
things that I love about this game and 2018 is because this relationship between Atreus and Kratos has the most development in this game. You get those conversations where they're talking man to man, and he's talking more freely. You know,
Yeah.
he's just been someone that has always been responding to everything with rage. That now his body is responding a different way, and the dam is broken, so you can see the brokenness inside him. And those moments when you capture the sense that he's looking at his boy becoming a man, which is like, I don't know. It's like this story is there's so much about this act about the acting. I mean, the kid that plays Atreus, bro,
Yeah,
amazing.
there's a reason why Sonny was nominated for Best Actor, right? And he lost to Christopher Judge, but it's like there is a reason why he was nominated because his performance. Like I think that's why, like even getting the segments where we have Atreus and Angrboda, right? And he's the main character. That would have been really hard to pull off, but they made Atreus such a fascinating lead. Once you start playing as him, it's like I understand that this kid can carry his own game. Like he
Yeah,
technically, if you wanted to, and that's where it felt like it was going, right? Because the whole prophecy of Kratos is gonna die. It's like, well, yeah, okay, so we're gonna follow Atreus from this point forward. And I love how they kind of undercut that, right? And they flip that entire idea on its head, where it's like Atreus is out having his own adventure, but we're still Kratos, which I think was a very fascinating way to end this game. Who knows where they take it next game, though?
yeah, yeah, and all the cast, the entire cast was amazing. I am looking at the different people that played the different characters, and it's just fascinating. The top tier cast that we've gotten for this game for the first one and this one, but they went all out on the cast. And the fact, my biggest surprise in the cast was that Richard Schiff is Odin.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
blew my mind. I know I mentioned this to you in chat, but when you found out who Richard Schiff is, what was your reaction?
You know, it's one of those things where, again, like not being able to talk about this game, you don't realize how much Sony hid from us when they were making this game. Like, because we would see like Odin in shadow. We never saw his face. Looking back at like all the trailers and the promotional material,
Yeah,
so it's like when that reveal happens, my jaw hit the floor, and I'm like, that's an interesting choice, and I love what they did with Odin. I love everything they did with Asgard, right? Sith, Odin, Thor, Heimdall. I think all of those
Thrud.
characters. Yeah, Thrud, a character you don't see very often, but it's like, yeah, that's awesome how we kind of played into that, especially after what happened, last time we met the sons of Thor.
Yeah,
So
Magnus and Modi.
I love what they did with Odin in this game. Like it's such a unique take, but it fits perfectly with how they wanted the story to go.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that they pick this top tier actor that can carry this because he's
Yeah.
and they focus on the main aspects of the characters, which is what I love the most. Also, is that Odin is a businessman. He's the ruthless businessman, so he's a liar. Even his truth are lies. Like every time Ymir talks about him, every time that Freya talks about him, and I love that they picked this person that looks simple, meek, but his power is in his tongue
Yeah.
because he has a silver tongue. But then again, the way he speaks to Thor, and then you see Thor, this drunkard, symbol of destruction. Which, by the way, I kudos to the fact that they gave him literally the same face as the actor, like the whole hair and everything. By the way, it was amazing. I love how bold they were with their decision of Thor, and I loved his how much Thor we get,
Yeah.
and Thor and Atreus, and how Odin treats Thor, and I love that Thor wasn't just this drunkard that destroys things. He's a broken child that is trying
Yeah.
to be a better man but can't. And how they make Thor this mirror to Kratos was just phenomenal, which is so great. And in the
We've
beginning, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like the mirror aspect, right? It's one of those reasons why I think from like any other gaming developer, even us as fans, we look at Thor and it's like we have to get Mjolnir at some point, right? Even if it's just for a second, you have to let us use Mjolnir. But they're like, no, you have the Leviathan axe. You don't need Mjolnir. They're a perfect mirror of each other as is. And I even love the fact, like when we're playing as Atreus, Thor, if you there, I don't know if you've seen like gameplay, but there are some people who just let Thor kill everyone, and Atreus just stands there because Thor is still acting as Kratos. Like in most games, the companions they don't deal hardly any damage, but Thor will kill any boss you come in contact with you don't have to do anything in this situation. And I just think that is so funny because that's essentially what Atreus was in the last game. We kind of would just stand there and watch his dad do everything. It's like you could stand there and watch Thor do everything if you choose to,
Every
you know?
companion does damage.
Yeah.
Like there were many times, especially throughout the Ragnarok sequence, which I keep going back there because I have thoughts about that, which we'll get into it as we go further.
It's also fresher in your mind than me.
Yes, I just finished it. The idea that a lot of the enemies were finished off by my companions, which
Yeah.
is great because it feels like an active companionship and duo as you're going through the motions. Um, I was very surprised that the main theme of the story was still fathers and sons, fathers
Yeah.
and daughters. That they used this as a means to continue that story and deepen it further and use other characters because you have father and son, Odin and Thor. You have father and daughter. You have Thor and Thrud. You have Freyr's relationship to Balder and how that rift was still there at the beginning of the game between Freya, Atreus, and Kratos. You have a growth on Kratos and Atreus. You have I'm looking for something here. You have Sif and Thrud. You know, like
You even have Angrboda and her grandmother,
yeah,
right? Like
yes,
in her family.
yeah, like family is a big point of this game, which is very surprising because the growth of every single character, which I think is the greatest achievement, is that every character grows and finishes in a different place than where they started. There is no character here, whether it's a tragic ending, right? Like Thor's and Sindri's and Brock's. Every character has a dramatic growth throughout the entirety of the game, and they all finish in a different place in every single aspect. And that's what allows those emotional punches that occur in going into Ragnarok and then towards the final scenes of the game, you're just broken. But broken in the best way, because you feel what the characters are feeling, you care about what the characters are experiencing. And to think that the attraction of this hack and slash game is the base for this phenomenal piece of media is just phenomenal.
Yeah. It's so fascinating how they tackle all of those themes, how they're all intertwined together. Like one of my favorite parts of the game, and one of the most surprising parts of the game is when we go back to Jotunheim and we meet Angrboda, right? And we're learning again more of the themes of fate and destiny. And it's like, how do we change the outcome? And the entire time you're on the edge of your seat because as soon as Atreus is like, I'm gonna manipulate Odin, and it's like, but the prophecy says your father's going to die, and you're gonna end up with Odin. Are we sure we want to go down that path? And I love how that's basically the antithesis of Atreus' character. What were your thoughts on like the focus being basically equal parts Kratos and Atreus, right?
I think
I think it's definitely one of my favorite aspects, at least because it was so unexpected, even though we probably should have saw it coming.
yeah. I, I, I love that it was unexpected. I love that it felt, but not only that it was unexpected, I think the most satisfying aspect of that is that it feels like this is a natural progression of this game.
Yeah.
This is what's supposed to happen. You know, like it doesn't feel like a lot of people talk about Last of Us Part 2 and a lot of the shift is the fact that 40 to 50% of the game you're playing as a character that you've never met before. And not only that, it's the character that, spoilers, murders another main character. So, but then again, that's part of the message and what they're trying to explore thematically,
Yeah.
right? About the cycle of violence and vengeance and all that stuff. That felt like a shock, but it works for the story. This works for the story, but feels natural. It doesn't feel like a visual shift in the narrative. Like, okay, this is what's supposed to happen. Why am I surprised? This is what's supposed to happen. And I love all those scenes with it, and I love how Atreus becomes his own character. He's no longer God of War is no longer just about Kratos. It's and his kid. It's about Kratos and Atreus.
Yeah,
It became their story, and I love how they took it to heart. Like, because you could have still made Kratos the main character, but no, they're sharing the screen. This is their story against prophecy, against fate. Um, but one of the things that, and I'm glad that you mentioned the prophecy and the fate, because I think that one of the most interesting themes that I found very interesting is this whole conversation about prophecy and fate and how the creative team handled it. And I love the message. And the message literally says, if you live according to your nature, then your fate is sealed. But if you're willing to go
yes,
against your nature, you can decide your fate.
that's what the Norns were essentially saying, right?
Exactly. But of course, in the minds and but it took but I love the fact that they were speaking truth. But it took the cast a while to understand what that meant.
Yeah,
And I love the idea of them going against their nature and failing and still going towards it, because that's the whole point about the fight with Heimdall. Because in the beginning, Kratos is going against his nature and chooses not to kill Heimdall. But then he ends up murdering Heimdall. But you got to think about this. Did he kill Heimdall because he wanted to kill him? Or did Heimdall really give him no choice? So, in other words, Heimdall's death is the result of Heimdall's actions, not necessarily the result of Kratos following his nature, even though it did take over in the way he literally pummeled him to death.
oh, it was so satisfying getting that first hit on Heimdall. Just going back to like gameplay
Yeah.
aspects, we haven't touched on those that much, but like when you finally get that first nick on Heimdall, it's just like, yes.
And I love the fact that the game makes a big deal about it. And Heimdall goes, "You, you hit me," like it was great. It was
Yeah,
so great. It was so great. Um, but yeah, the whole thing about that choices matter, and this is just people trying to be better and make better choices, and
yeah,
that's the main theme, right? Like, because from 2018 God of War, he's lamenting a lot of the choices that he felt he needed to make in the previous games, where he was this entity of destruction, and
yeah,
literally, like the way they talk about it, Greece don't exist no more. That's kind of like how they kind of hint at it, like ancient Greece like doesn't exist anymore. Like that motherland is like it doesn't exist. That realm is gone. I mean,
it's yeah,
at least that's the way they plant it, right? And the fact that he escaped to this new land, to Midgard, to start over. I love how it evolves into that, and every character has a choice to make. Every character has a decision to make, and I love how they play that theme all the way up to the end, where I mean, first of all, when Odin shoves the spear on Kratos, I went like, no. And then suddenly, of
yeah.
course, it's just part of the sequence. But by the way, that sequence when they're like that quick play moment where the
Hmm.
final hits on Odin are coming in, and you're literally controlling all three of them, Freya, Atreus, and Kratos against Odin. It
Yeah,
is phenomenal. But I love that it ended with,
Sindri.
yeah,
Yeah, that's another thing of like changing your fate, right? And going against your nature. That's another instance of Sindri was the meek, like kind of scared one. He's the one who just comes in and just finishes the job, right? And
yeah.
it's like, yeah, it would have been a different game if he stayed true to who he was prior to Brock's death. And oh, man, the emotional roller coaster of this game. Like, what was your thought process when Odin revealed himself in that situation?
Bro, bro. Not only did it, I mean, I wasn't expecting it at all,
Yeah,
but it made all the sense in the world. And
yeah,
and I'm surprised of how satisfying the twist was. Like, I don't think I've had a twist so satisfying as this one in a long time. And also the twist at the end, where Loki and when Atreus and is kneeling right next to Odin, and Odin is saying, "I'm gonna do what I do. Like, I need to know." I'm thinking, "Oh, Atreus is gonna kill him." Like, that's what I'm thinking. But
Yeah.
he chooses to not give in to his nature and just seals his soul away. And I love the fact that choice is a big thing because it's also a the best myths, right? The best stories all are about teaching the next generation or the current generation about it's a life lesson, right? And I love
Yeah.
the fact, and not that the game is preachy. I'm not saying that, but there's no way that you don't have this certain weight of teaching the player something of value because it is a timeless lesson. You are the sum of your choices. And if those choices are driven by your own nature, then it is what it is. But you are the sum of your choices. There's one very interesting thing that happens while you're in the boat. You know, Mimir boat. You know, just riding along. Conversations happen.
Yeah.
So one of the artifacts that you collect throughout the game are Kvasir's poems, right?
Yeah.
And there's a moment where Mimir tells him, "Do you have a favorite poem, Kratos?" And throughout the game, he asks the question multiple times until Kratos actually answers. There's this one about a war, a man that gave everything to save his loved one. And Mimir says, "Oh, is that the one where there's a wooden horse? That's not the one that should be."
Yeah.
And then he goes like, "Yes, I don't like the war. I like the poem better." Freaking Kratos is citing Homer. Like, it's like, but
Did you read the poems that you pick up along the way and see all of the PlayStation stories in those poems?
I have not read the poems. I
Read the
think
poems. Just that there's poems and it's like if it's one about like this legendary samurai and it's clearly Ghost of Tsushima. There's one about this father and daughter and it's clearly The Last of Us and it's like
I have to
re-
read it. I
read the
have to.
poems.
Okay, you just blew my mind. Which, by the way,
So great.
because you blew my mind, I'm gonna say this now before we jump because there are a couple of other things. Like, I think it's safe to say, simple comment: the music is phenomenal.
Oh yeah,
Again, Bear McCreary.
amazing.
Um, which I love the music. I love that it's an expansion of. I love the fact that the music and the soundtrack is good throughout. We talked about the voice acting. We talked about the dialogue. Now the ending,
Ragnarok.
Ragnarok. First of all, I'm gonna say this, and it might sound blasphemous, but I just played it, and this is how I feel. This is a better final act than Endgame.
I mean, I feel like the story in the God of War games are better than just about all of them in the MCU, so I don't think it's blasphemous to say that at all.
Well, what I mean by that is that, you know, the big similarities is that you have this catastrophic scenario where everybody
Yeah.
comes together, right? The scenery throughout the Asgard Ragnarok sequence, the fact that you see the serpent, you see the Ragnarok beast, you see all the elves just falling down everywhere. You're fighting the Einhar. The fact that you're starting with Freya and suddenly then they're going to split up missions. Then you go with Atreus and then you go further and then you automatically Kratos goes to do another thing and then you're with Atreus and Sindri and then you're mastering the bear and then you're doing
Yeah.
and you're moving further and then you're back to Kratos and Atreus and Thrud. Like
All
this.
before, right before, you're fighting Valkyries trying to cause Ragnarok with Surtur. It's just like that final act is just
Yeah,
wild.
it's
Before
wild.
we go too far, did you notice that you created the world serpent when you did it the first time with Angrboda?
I did not. But the thing is this though, isn't that a separate serpent, or is that Jormungandr?
It's Jormungandr.
So you created a second one. So
No, time loop. Remember, Jormungandr blinks out and gets sent back in time. So in 2018, when Loki says, "Why does he act like he knows me?" It's because he gets sent to the beginning of time and then just grows and grows and ages all the way back to 2018. He's like, "Oh, hey, Dad, how's it going?"
so when he does the serpent and the serpent goes away,
Right. That's why it's like it's Jormungandr, but he looks younger somehow. They say that, and it's like
oh my
that's the
god,
serpent that Atreus and Angrboda freed in Jotunheim, and then it disappears because it gets sent to the beginning of time.
bro, stop,
So
stop.
many layers, man. It's like an
So many
onion.
layers. Coming soon. But no, I didn't notice that. It's just see, those are the kind of things that blew my mind, bro. It
Yeah.
blew my mind. But here's the other thing that blew my mind, though. Did you do? Did you battle the Valkyries? Oh, another thing about story that blew my mind. Did you battle the Valkyries in the 2018?
I did and failed, and so it was salt in the wound every time. Like you defeated the Valks. Like no, I didn't. Leave me alone.
No, no. But here's the thing, though. They're optional bosses,
Yeah.
but we're being told by Ragnarok that they're canon.
Yeah. The developers said that every side quest from the past game is canon, and they all did happen.
So whether you finish it or not, so
Right.
so I beat the Valkyries. I defeated the Valkyries. I'm not trying to.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to. But every time, and the fact that I see Sigrun reborn and all of that, I was like, so it wasn't just a side quest because
No.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that developer quote. So I
That
discovered
that wasn't until after this game came out. That's the
Oh,
thing. Where it's
bro.
like
But I was like,
everything's canon.
bro, that's like there's no, there's no, there's no revisionist heroes rising history, huh? Like
Right.
it's no, but that's the kind of storytelling that just wows me, because when I see Sigrun, and then I see the other ones, and I'm like, so I did free them. So now I wonder
Yeah.
what's gonna happen when I take down the Berserkers, which again, a great addition because we don't have Valkyries anymore, which is great.
Go back because I assume you didn't do any of the post game. Go back to Muspelheim. Just go back to Muspelheim. There's a quest that they don't tell you about, so just make sure you circle back there, even if it looks like you completed everything.
Cool. Well, I still have to do the like post game stuff. I still have to do the Crucibles. I
Yeah.
still have to do. I gotta finish the Eyes of Odin, and then I gotta definitely take down the Berserkers, and then the Remnants of Asgard. Which brings me to this: I was not expecting. I don't think anybody was, but apart from the heartfelt ending, which we have to talk about then. Well, we have to talk about the big death, and then we got to talk about the catalyst, right? The Coulson
Yeah.
moment. We got to talk about the big catalyst, but we also got to talk to the ending. So I figure we take them in order. That'd be the best thing.
Sounds. Yeah.
So not only does Tyr reveal himself to be Odin, which was like, so Tyr has been dead all these years. That's literally what they're telling us. Which, by the way, I found it fascinating because if you go to 2018 God of War,
Mm-hmm.
the Tyr images
Yeah.
look like Kratos.
That's what I was saying at the top of the
Yeah,
recording is
yeah.
that you realize that Tyr is going to do all these things. It's just like, when you really squint your eyes a little bit, it's just Kratos, isn't it?
I mean, it's not just another ball guy.
You're right.
Right.
Dude, you're gonna love this post game so much. But with the Tyr stuff, I love that when you look back, it all makes sense. He's constantly causing a divide between Kratos and Atreus. He's constantly never really offering helpful information. He's always like, hey, are we sure we want to do this? We don't want to cause Ragnarok. We don't want to do blah, blah, blah. And it's like he's trying to nudge them or delay them. And I think when you really play it back and you look at everything Tyr has said, even down to the subtitles, spelling Tyr differently, it's like every
Wait,
single
wait, wait,
detail.
wait.
Yeah.
What?
If you look at when Tyr is talking, right, and the subtitles are on the screen, it's Tyr. And it's like, okay, you don't think much of it. But when they're talking about Tyr. It's Ty with an accent on the top, R, which is how it was in 2018. And so it's like the fake Tyr, they were telling you from the beginning, if you
Bruh.
were an English nerd and you're
Bruh.
like, why is it spelled differently?
Bruh. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
It's like it's so many small details, and I think that's just
That is
so great.
crazy. That is crazy. Yo, you're blowing my mind.
Yeah,
Now, of course, the biggest hurt is not just the fact that it was revealed that Tyr was Odin, is that it's revealed as he murders Brock. Which,
and Brock was the only one who noticed something was wrong with Tyr the entire time. He never, you think about it, he never liked Tyr.
yeah, he never liked Tyr.
Awful.
And it's crazy because we get so much more Brock and Sindri. Because why? Because we're bringing together. So they're together from the beginning. So you get a lot more of the brothers throughout the game. And
Not just that, they're also becoming Kratos and Atreus' family, right?
Right.
Like they rely on each other. I love the beginning of the game too. Mimir is he's still there, just hanging out with like their family. He even calls Kratos brother. Kratos responds and calls him brother. And it's like they've become a tight knit unit, which I love.
the family that you choose.
Yeah.
Choose. But the fact that Brock, after having the incredible experience making Dropnir, which again, great addition to one's arsenal, by the way.
It's my favorite.
That lance was fire. At the beginning, I looked at the lance and I was like, eh. And then I found myself using it so much. And I was like, okay, awesome. I want to actually ask you what are your favorite runic attacks, because I think that's telling. So I want to do that later. So let's put a note there. But the fact that he has that heart-to-heart with Kratos, that he blesses Draupnir, he finds out that he died once. Like, all that. And I love how he goes on to say to Kratos, "Hey, this is my story to tell, so don't tell my story." Because and Kratos like understands because he respects him. He respects the dwarves. I can't do judge.
Yeah.
But the fact that
I love how his relationship with Brock too, right? He's like, he's my favorite. He speaks plain, and it's just like
right. Like he doesn't bullshit. He just you know. And then when Odin does what he does, and he falls to the ground, again, so much tension. Which again, I love how it's not a twist just to be a twist. It literally unravels the story, and it unravels every character, and it unravels you as opposed like holy, and because directly he impacts Brock. Brock's on the floor bleeding. He has the mask. He wants the mask. He has Atreus here. In my mind, I'm like, Atreus, become a bear, become something, do something, like you know what I mean. And then suddenly, as he's getting away, Brock saves the day. Why? Because Brock helped make Draupnir, which is the one tool that Kratos is able to use to recover the mask.
Yep.
You know? But then again, the final words from Brock was him talking to Sindri like, you got to stop. You can't just keep bringing me back because you can't move on. And the idea then that he doesn't have an afterlife now because he was already brought back once, which is like, to make it even like the fact that
twisting the knife
and the fact that the relationship with Sindri is forever changed. He's no longer your smith. You cannot get upgrades from Sindri anymore. Like to me, that was something so like, what? Like so the only time that you have an opportunity to do an upgrade to your armor before blowing Gjallarhorn is with Hilda. Because Sindri is not there and he doesn't care about you. Like you guys are done.
And wherever you go, mild spoiler, I guess, it'll always be Hilda. She's the one doing it now. Wherever you go, where Brock and Sindri were, she's the one there. Like, hey, you need an upgrade because Sindri's just doesn't deal with us anymore.
And I find it interesting the fact that how we meet Hilda was just so funny.
Yeah.
So
Did you do her side quest, by the way?
the one for the orb that
Yeah,
was
the
just a
ball.
plushie for bro. That was hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was just crazy. It was crazy. I was not expecting it to go that way. But yeah, like it just breaks everything. And at that point, like I was doing side quests all over, but after that, the hurt was so much that I just focused on finishing the game. Which
Yeah.
again, I wasn't expecting that. Like it was one of those moments where like, fuck it, I need to just
You need to
finish the
see what
game.
happens next.
Yes,
Yeah.
like and that's telling to how powerful that scene was.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I didn't want to say too much because I'm like, Brandon, don't do so many side quests. You want to make sure you do some of them with Dropnir. Brandon, don't do so many side quests. You want to make sure you have you alternate between your companions so you can get the different segments of dialogue, but you also want the player to find that organically,
Yeah,
right? And I think that's why, again, looking back at how they marketed this game, it is so amazing that they didn't show us Odin. They didn't tell us about the multiple companions. They didn't tell us that Atreus was playable. And I'm just like,
they
how did you
didn't
hide all of
reveal.
that?
They didn't reveal that you were meeting Faye.
No.
That was one of the like,
Played by Deborah Ann Wolf, by the way.
hello, hello, like yes, I was not expecting that at all either. She announced it like maybe a week after the game came out, something like
After
that.
the game came out, I'm like, that might have still been too soon because I feel like some folks still didn't get a chance to get that far. But
I was kind of mad that it was revealed, but then she's amazing in everything she does, so
yeah,
I wasn't that mad later. um, but we talked about battle system, we talked about the story, we talked about the big twist, and now the big twist with Thor.
yeah,
Apparently, I love the fact that like when Atreus comes back from Asgard, he has conversations with Mimir about the things that have changed in Asgard. The fact that Sif and Thor no longer drink, like that was like, what? The fact that he's trying to be better, and then of course you understand it now because you've seen Odin abuse his son, because
yeah.
that's who Odin is. He uses
Or
him as a gun, not as a person or god or whatever.
even when we first meet them, though, right? Like at the very beginning of the game, Thor's like, I've got meat, and they come in and they have the big meeting right at the table, and Odin's just like, yeah, the boys, I don't care about that. Just stop trying to cause Ragnarok. And it's like that shows how heartless and how uncaring Odin is at the start of the game, right?
Yeah.
Because they murdered his grandsons, and he's just like,
he doesn't care.
whatever.
He doesn't care
But Thor does, and that's like you can
because they're
see
his
Thor
kids.
tenses. He tenses up, and it's like their relationship is not in a good place.
Right.
And from that moment, I'm like, I wonder how that's gonna go.
Yeah.
And it was great.
And I love the fact that one of the most powerful lines in the entirety of the game is the fact that the fight with Thor does not end with death by Kratos' hand. I was not expecting that.
He tried to do a talk no jutsu.
Oh yes,
Like,
he was trying to pull a pain.
yeah, he was just like, we're gonna
Yes.
talk about this.
Yes.
Listen, I'm not fighting you, and I'm like, wow, Kratos, that's big of you.
No, the choices, but then he says the words. He says, "We," and then Thor says, "We are destroyers." And Kratos says, "No more. We have to be better for our children." And I just went, bro.
Yeah,
And I went, bro. And the fact that Thor understood it. And Thor dies standing up to his dad. Which is like, I mean, think about it. He's been abused forever.
yeah.
And he chooses to stand up against his abuser. Did it cause him death? Yes. But he decided the man he was going to be.
what I love too about all of this though is that it's direct contrast to what happened in the last game. Kratos gives Thor the opportunity and he talks to him and gives him the chance to make his own choice. Whereas in the last game, Kratos made the choice for Freya, and that caused the cycle of hatred to continue. Whereas if Kratos kills Thor, they now make an enemy of Sif and Thrud. But by allowing Thor to make his own choice and being able to help him come to that conclusion, they now have allies in Sif and Thrud. And it's like, I'm glad that they were able to, because even Kratos, I don't know if it was in one of the side quests or not, but he even says to Freya, he's like, I was wrong. I shouldn't have made that choice for
Yes,
you,
that's
and I'm
that's
forever
that's
sorry.
that's during the quest of freeing Freya from Odin's
Yeah,
grasp. Yeah, yeah, in
and
Vanaheim.
it's like yeah, because technically he wasn't wrong by killing Boulder, but if she's saying don't, and she was willing to let him kill her, that's when Kratos should have been like, okay, this is awful, but there's nothing we can do about it.
Right, because Balder
And
wasn't attacking him.
right,
They did it to save someone, but when that person, but then it goes back to the idea: if that person doesn't want to be saved,
right.
you know.
And so I love how in this game, instead of just killing Thor or killing Odin, he's just like, I want to tell you how I feel about it, but it's up to you to make that decision.
Right.
And it's like, Kratos learned. He actually learned something.
No, but the fact that he's learned to also respect his son,
Yeah.
because he says it, we were able to win because of all of your choices, like because he decided that he can trust his son. And it's funny because even though Loki's known as the god of mischief, right? It's funny because in the beginning of the game, I felt that that was the angle in the beginning of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But all his intentions were clear and honest. He wanted to save his father. That's what he wanted to do. That's what he desired. And I don't know, man. It was just great. It was just great, great, great. Um, Now, of course, I felt that Odin's final fight was great. I love the fact that it had 3 stages,
Yeah.
which it's what you expect from a final fight, right? I love the game that was bigger and bolder. Um, can we talk about the fact that we revisit all the realms? We visit Asgard for the first time.
Yeah. Which is
Um,
beautiful, by the way. Like, I love that's a completely different take on Asgard than
yeah,
I expected, but
yeah.
it was great.
We visit Asgard for the first time, but I love that every single realm that we revisit feels actively different, feels like somewhere that we've never been before. Like, I was so amazed that everything feels like I've never been here before. I mean, of course, a lot of things are different areas of the same realm, but
Yeah.
even that, I mean, everything feels changed. I love the idea that Fimbulwinter had an effect on every different realm in a different way. Um, I don't know, man. It was great.
I even love down to the detail of if you go back to Midgard, you still see like the frozen lightning bolt from when Thor and Kratos first fought, and it's just there now. Like every detail. I even love how we have day and night cycles. I love there's just so much
Yeah,
in all of these realms. I love them all.
and
Um
and then you also have.
Post game, you've got some fun stuff coming up
Oh,
because
I
each
can't wait.
realm has new stuff going on.
Yeah,
It's like
because Fimbulwinter's gone, so I got to see what the differences are there. But also with Vanaheim, the fact that you're able to learn more about Fae,
yeah,
and then the ending, the fact that Faye was in Midgard because she decided to go against fate.
right.
And that's just the lesson that she's been teaching Kratos. And like, oh man. And it was just poetic the way that game ended. Let's I think we're ready to talk about the ending.
Yeah. Let's go for it.
Um Atreus, at the end of the day, he almost dies trying to save his father, which to me was great. I love the prophecy misdirect because you're always expecting things to go that way because they're talking about it. but because they're making their own choices, everything's actively being written, which I think is brilliant.
Yes and no, though, right? Because even though that you feel that that's kind of happening, you get to a moment like the moment when Kratos kills Heimdall, it's just like we haven't changed anything at all, really, have we? And even Mimir's like, you could have just not killed him. We could have prevented everything. But now we just enacted Ragnarok. So I love how even though you can kind of feel that things are going slightly different, there's still big moments where it's like, yeah, you may have changed this, but it's not enough of a ripple in time to completely negate, right?
Well, but here's the other thing, though. Think about this. To me, one of the biggest changes to kind of contrast, because I see that a different way.
Yeah.
Um, Now, Ragnarok happening or not is Kratos' choice, which it wasn't before. Because
Yeah.
what would have stopped Heimdall from using Gjallarhorn when he was left almost dead by Kratos?
Right.
Because he defeated Heimdall, now he has a choice to blow Gjallarhorn whenever he wants. And that's what happens. He chooses to blow Gjallarhorn.
Yeah.
It's
It's
this. It's just freaking norms.
the no oh, that sequence was so irritating, but so
Yes.
funny.
Yeah.
I'd love did you can't do this anymore because you've effectively lost Atreus. But if you go back to where the Norns were with Atreus, he's just like, "Father, why are we here?" And he's just like, "You like animals. I wanted you to see the horse." And the and it's like the horse is gone, but he's just like, it's kind of awkward. Like he's like, oh, "I wanted my son to see the cool water horse, but we can't go back."
It's like when you take your kid to the mall. You liked carousels when you were a kid. Dad,
Yeah.
I have a giant wolf. Like, what are we doing?
It's a cute moment
Yeah.
that I think you might be locked out of
Well,
permanently now.
I
But
actually made the choice. I think I saved it. I have two saves,
okay,
one before Gjallarhorn and one after. So I think I can still kind of, but I kind of just want to go through the Berserkers now and just finish them
there's
off.
no trophy or anything for that, but it's a fun thing to look
Yeah,
up on YouTube.
but the fact that it's there, the fact that it's there, it's just phenomenal. It's just great.
Yeah,
Um, so the very ending where where they say goodbye to each other, which again I honestly was not expecting, but kudos to the writing team for not leaving any loose ends because
yeah,
they technically didn't, because Loki's job is to save the giants, and now that Ragnarok is over and done, he's able to do so, to be the champion of the Jotnar. So he's not the champion of the Jotnar because he wins Ragnarok. He's a champion of the Jotnar because he's able to reconstruct Jotunheim. That's the whole point. Because all the giants went into hiding because of fear of Odin.
yeah,
But then you think about this. What if the Jotnar went into hiding because their champion left, and Faye was their champion? And
yeah,
which is like another twist. And the idea that when you learn in Vanaheim that the Thunderbolt that's in Vanaheim is because Faye and Thor fought,
yeah.
which is like, buddy. Now,
And it makes sense because of course she's wielding the Leviathan axe, so the same thing happens on Midgard,
yeah,
and it's just like,
part of me wants to know. Part of me wants to like see Adventures of Faye, like maybe like a comic book on the side, like who Faye was. I want to know more about her now, but I wish I
do
could find
what Uncharted did, right, with Lost Legacy, where we're following Chloe instead of Nate. You can do a small like
yeah,
10-hour spin-off game
yeah,
for like $50. I'd buy it in a heartbeat.
yes, give me more.
Plus, it's the same mechanic because she still has the axe. So
Yes, but I wonder if she has different moves too, like because her body's different and she has magic Kratos
yeah,
doesn't have. So that would be super interesting to see. Maybe she can do stuff with the axe that Kratos would never be able to do because of that.
that would be a fun twist.
And I also kind of want to know why she died,
Yeah,
because we never find that out. But then again, it's not necessary for the story. But the fact that the ending is that they are able to that Atreus has to go away because he still has the responsibility to his people. And the fact that Kratos understands, like that final piece of dialogue, does it frighten you? That is why you must do it.
Yeah.
Because,
So powerful.
and to think, what is fear but something that goes against our nature? When you don't
Yeah.
do something because you're afraid, it's because it's not easy for you to do naturally. So the idea to overcome fear is to defy fate and yada 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 again. And then when they actually get together, and then when he hugs him and he says, "I'm tearing up right now." Fuck. When he
This
literally,
is how I was a month ago.
yeah,
Like I was an
and,
emotional wreck for
and
days.
he literally says, Loki leaves, but Atreus
Atreus.
remains." I was like, bruh,
It's
bruh, like the poet, like I don't know, bro, bruh. Oh, and by the way, so that happens, and then you get the final shot
yeah.
of Atreus leaving, and the game ends. Then it doesn't.
Doesn't. Yeah.
So the idea that the game ends and doesn't at the same time, I have never seen that happen before. Like, yes, I've seen New Game Plus. Yes, I've seen that you can go back and do other quests like afterward. But the fact that there's still canon gameplay after the ending of the game,
The ultimate post credit scene,
like
right?
like 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 the path that Faye set out for him was so that he can be a god that was worshipped. Not worshipped like Odin, but worshipped in the sense
A
because
people's champion, essentially. Yeah.
Rock's no longer the people's champion. So it's Kratos. I'm sorry, I had to drop that. But yeah,
Hierarchy of power is about to change.
yes.
I'm
So
sorry.
so it's funny because it's like uh, his son is the champion of Jotnar, but now
Yeah.
Kratos is the champion of the realms because he's going to be that one that's going to bring the realms together.
All well, 8 of the 9 realms are brought together to unite, right? And I think that is why that ending hits so hard, right? Like even when Freyr sacrifices himself, right? It's just like there's a side quest about Freyr. Did you do that before or after?
Which side quest?
I think it's is it Alfheim? I think it's in Alfheim.
But which? Oh, I didn't do it.
Okay.
So when he
Uh,
goes to recruit Alfheim, there's a side quest there.
there is a side quest there. Um, I'm not gonna spoil it because it's one of those things where you could have played it before or after Ragnarok. I was just trying to see if there was any like major differences after he's no longer,
Yeah,
alive. The
right.
dialogue's any different.
Oh, by the way,
But
Freyr's boat.
I loved that scene so much. And like that was some great comedic timing of them being like the only ones freaking out. Everybody's just like, guys, we're fine. We're flying on the boat.
And it's funny because they know this because they know the boat and they know the mythology. They
Yeah.
don't know anything because
Right.
I don't think Mimir freaks out though.
No, he doesn't.
It's just
I,
Kratos and Atreus.
that's the one thing Atreus' mom never taught him, I guess, was like, oh yeah, there's flying boats here.
Yeah.
But I wanted your thoughts on them saying that this is the conclusion of the Norse duology in the God of War franchise. If you go back and you look at all the murals from the last game and even in this game, we see um, Tyr. We see Tyr, and he's in Egypt, and he's in all these other mythologies, something that Kratos has not done. But once we start to learn that a lot of this might be representing Kratos' journey, are you excited to see them kind of leave this realm and go somewhere else, or do you kind of wish we just stay with Atreus and do whatever he's doing in the future?
So it's funny that you say that because part of me wants it to end, wants it to just be this.
Just this is the end of
Yeah,
God of War.
part of me wants that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like an actor. I feel like an actor. Like
Mhm.
if the right script comes along, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because now I think the one thing about the game or this franchise now is that this franchise has not reached that that status where else do you go and maintain the level of quality of storytelling? You know what I mean? Like, where else can you
Hmm.
go? So you have to, because you gotta understand. I think we all know that they planned this out since before 2018 Ragnarok, before 2018 God of War came out. They did
Yeah.
plan to do two games, and of course, it was just solidified when God of War was the huge hit that it was, right?
Right.
But this was the plan all along, because you don't get that post-credit scene with Thor in God of War 2018 if it's not because they planned to move on, right?
Yeah, and even in this game, a lot of the post game stuff, there's not a lot that says, "Oh, this is set up for a sequel." It's more tying up the loose ends
Right.
from these two
Which is what I
games.
want, right? That's kind of what I
Yeah.
want there, because the story's been so good that I kind of want to tie up all the loose ends from what's happened.
Right.
Um, but part of me doesn't want more. But at the same time, if the right story comes along, why not? You know? And also the challenge here is what's the emotional throughput here? You know,
Yeah.
because Atreus is no longer there. I mean, and the idea that he's a champion of the Jotnar doesn't necessarily tell you that he's gonna leave the Norse realms. Like, he's not gonna go beyond there, right?
Right. So if
Um,
Kratos leaves, he's no longer with Atreus, Freya, or
right,
Mimir, and it's like,
correct. So how do you open this up again without him reverting into who he was, but moving his character forward in a positive fashion? Now,
right.
part of me does see that there's a possibility that he takes Freya with him, for the sake that you kind of feel there's a relationship there brewing, kind of. You know what I mean? Because you got these two broken people that are gods, that are eternal. That, you know what I mean?
And Mimir's not going anywhere, so he can come along too.
Right.
He'd probably love to sightsee.
Exactly. So you have a good setup there, but there has to be the right story. There has to be the right things to do, um,
Yeah.
and of course, it's all about also exploring. If you're, like, the one common theme of God of War is that you keep exploring deities, right? You got to do it
Yeah.
in a way that makes sense too. So. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. Part of me is completely. I think I'm so satisfied at this point that I don't think about anything more. I just don't want a blimp in the future. If it's gonna happen, let's do it, but let's do it with the right script. Let's do it with the right story.
Yeah. I'm thinking that they need to approach it like Naughty Dog did. For example, like they told their story with Uncharted, they ended their story with Uncharted, and it's like we're gonna focus on this new franchise, The Last of Us,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I want them to be like, hey, we did God of War, we can return to God of War in 6 years, a decade if they want to.
Right.
They can even reboot the franchise if they want to,
Right.
because those first three games could use a remake or a remaster. But I think starting a new franchise would be the way I would go, at least for right now.
So it's funny that you mentioned Uncharted, because I think it didn't necessarily happen the way you said it, but you're not wrong. But listen to this. I think there's a 5 year gap
Mm.
between Uncharted 3 and 4. Like,
Yep.
the first three games were pretty succession, right? But also Uncharted 4, not disregarding what you said, but the reason Uncharted 4 for me works so well is that it is that situation. Like, the right script came along. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And
Uncharted 4 is it's honestly a perfect game in my opinion.
yeah, yeah, and it really does evolve the gameplay. Of course, it's a PS4 game.
Yeah.
It was one of the release games, I think, for PS4. But
Yep.
but it does feel like one of those right script situations. You know what I mean? The right story came along. This justifies pulling Nathan out of retirement, and then putting him in retirement completely. But
Yeah, well, Uncharted 3, the way that game ends, it did feel like there was still more to tell, right?
right,
And it feels like Uncharted 4 was we're going to finish this franchise out. That's what I mean by it's not
No,
that
no, I
they
agree.
finished Uncharted to move on to Last of Us. It's more of we are this is the conclusion for that for at least the Nathan Drake character.
Right.
Lost Legacy started out as DLC for Uncharted 4, but then that got so big it became its own like spin-off game.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't necessarily count that as like the franchise continuing,
Right.
especially since that hasn't gotten a sequel.
Right.
But yeah,
Fair enough.
I think Uncharted being having a definitive end, but The Last of Us not, right? It got Last of Us 2. It might get Last of Us 3. It's got the multiplayer game that they're going to be making shortly. It's got a show that's about to air in a matter of days by the time you guys see this. And so it's like that's what I want for Sony Santa Monica. It's like we did a good conclusion to the entire God of War franchise, not just this section.
Correct.
They can come back to it later, or I think at least one game break, right? The next game should be new, and then you can come back to God of War if they have the right story.
I think we're in agreement, sir. We agree. Yeah, it has to be the right script. Now, I think we've talked everything, right?
As much as we can, there's still things I can't say to you yet.
Damn you. So, okay, so I'm going to ask this. I think it's a great way. Let's be players now. Let's talk about players, right? Favorite companion.
Favorite companion. I love how we were able to have Brock and Sindri as companions. Their gameplay was just so different from everyone else's. But for me, it's probably still Atreus. Because I feel like Atreus works, like, he and Kratos are training together all the time. So they balance each other out very well.
Yeah. For some reason, I didn't think about it till now, actually. I didn't have an answer. But I'm going to go with Thrud. I liked and Angrboda. I like them being two teenagers, same age as Atreus or same age range, and just having kids exploring the world, right?
I also love how they're able to make mistakes, right? We unleash this beast, and it's like that's a side mission now. We gotta clean up that mess.
Yep.
And it's like they're allowed to make mistakes, which is awesome.
Yeah. So I like that. Okay. Leviathan Axe. Favorite runic attacks.
So I tried to make my Leviathan Axe as close as I possibly could to my 2018 axe because I just got done playing New Game Plus.
Fair enough.
And I felt like I had no moves, but I love.
Yeah.
There's this one that they added, and I forgot to mention this. So when you're fighting Odin, right, and he's just like 3-on-1 is not fair odds, and then Mimir's just like it's technically 4-on-1, you effer. And it's like, I love that one of the runic attacks is Mimir, and I don't know if you've equipped that ability, but if you remember when they're building the one of the gateways, they take Mimir and they say, "Hold on 1 second." They like Brock and Sindri blast him with Bifrost energy.
Yeah.
So one of the runic attacks, Kratos picks up Mimir and he's using like laser Bifrost energy.
Yo,
to
I haven't.
You might have it.
I don't have that yet. What the hell?
Yeah.
Yo!
So
okay. So it's not equipped. Is it like a runic like that you activate with the O button, or is it a runic that you could put in a weapon?
You activate it with the circle button. Yeah.
Okay, so
he picks him up.
Bro, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
It's so funny. And so if you go back and you play and he says it's technically 4-on-1, Kratos can just whip him out and be like, "Surprise, sucker," and just blast Odin and make Mimir the final blow, which is just so funny to me.
That's awesome. That's literally do or die hard. Yippee-ki-yay.
Right? Like you just pull him off your back. Surprise.
Yeah.
But as far as the Leviathan Axe, I just love shooting frost beams. It's great for damage. I need crowd control. So all of my weapons are for close attacks. So the spear is the ultra stabby one.
Yes.
And then when he throws it in the air,
and the rain,
and then like all of it rains down.
See, that's me too. I'm big on crowd control. So Dropnir was the 1,000 army poke.
Yeah.
And then the Wrath of the Heavens, which is where all the spears fall down. So definitely that. For the Leviathan Axe, it was the Tempest one, which is where he spins around with the axe.
Yeah.
It's like an extended Frost Awaken, kind of. and I fell in love with the ability Breath of Thalmor. Do you know which one that is?
I not by name. No.
So that's
Which
the
one is that?
one where it's a heavy runic for the Leviathan axe. He literally grabs the axe, puts it up in the air, and a storm of frost just.
Never seen that one.
So here's the cool thing. So it's an area effect one, so it's a frost attack too. So whenever you lift it, it creates this whirlpool of frost that lasts for like 10 seconds. It hits everything. But here's the best thing about it, which is why I loved it. Every hit that attack does increases your permafrost.
Oh,
So a lot of times, by the time the attack ended, I can do L1 triangle and go full permafrost. And yeah, bro.
that's sick. I haven't seen that one yet. I'm really bad at equipping new abilities. That's
I mean,
just
once
not
they,
like
I get it. Once they work, so what, you know?
yeah.
So that one was my favorite for that one. That was my favorite for Dropnir. Now, do you have a favorite for the Blades of Chaos?
For the Blades of Chaos, I don't. I'm just gonna be controversial. I don't really like the Blades of Chaos. Like, so I don't use that many. Again, one for crowd control when Kratos like stabs the ground and like all the fire shoots out.
Oh, that's the. It's not Atlas Eruption. I know which one you mean. I had that
Yeah.
one for a while. That he goes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that one, and then like the grapple where he like goes scorpion and he pulls you in
Yeah.
and sets you on fire.
Yeah, the Hyperion grapple. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so I do want to know what your favorite weapon is because Atreus and Kratos actually have this conversation in game, which I think is funny. But yeah,
Weapons are tools. I don't have a
I like the
preference.
X.
Yeah, I'm a big. So I like the versatility.
Yeah.
I love the Blades of Chaos. I like the axe. To me, what I love about the battle system is that everything feels like it's in my hand, and I can easily switch weapons like in an instant. And I can do runic to like that's what I love most about this game. The battle system is just so particular that it just allows you to just flow. It is just so great. That's what I
Yeah.
love the most about this. But I love the one that I never stopped using was Hades Retribution, which I think that's the way it's called. That literally he powers up. That's the light runic attack for the Blades of Chaos. He literally lights up them, and then he stabs the enemy multiple times, and after a little bit, it just explodes. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that one. And then the Nemean Crush is one from God of War 2018, where he goes like this, and he literally does like a closes in on every enemy, and it just explodes.
We didn't even talk about like the enemies in this game, right? I love how you never really come across the same enemy twice.
Yeah.
Some of them are a little repetitive, but it's like for the most part, there's so many different. I don't fight ogres as nearly as often in this game as I did in 2018.
Yeah, they're
You
very
see,
different.
like,
and you have the ogres, and then every single giant is different too. Like
Yeah.
it's a different elemental kind of giant.
right?
Yeah,
And so it keeps you on your toes because it's like, oh wait, I can't use Dropnir on this one. I need to pull out the Blades of Chaos because I need to get through the ice shield or. And so I love how it keeps you on your toes.
yeah, all the time. What difficulty did you finish the game?
I don't remember the names for them. So I was on normal, whatever that one was called, and I had to drop it down because again I was struggling early on in the game because I was depowered, and I think I just stayed there.
I started and finished the game and Give Me No Mercy. It
That's
was,
brutal.
but I loved it because it kept me on my toes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the game's great. Love exploring. Can't wait to explore more. Love the story. Santa Monica Studio, Sony. Thank you for God of War.
You're the game of the year in our hearts.
Yes.
Put it that way.
Yes. Yes. To me, you're the game of the decade because I could even say that the duology of God of War is the game of the decade, but Ragnarok is just such a great achievement in and of itself that it's awesome.
It's a masterpiece. I don't say that too often, but yeah,
It
it's perfection.
Anything else on God of War, Ragnarok?
I think we said all that we can. There's still things that I'm not gonna say because I don't want to spoil you or the people who haven't done the post game. Get the platinum on God of War Ragnarok. It is definitely worth it. Kratos, I'm gonna just say it, is one of the best characters ever created. Just seeing his journey from the first three games, even if you don't like him as a character, seeing how that informs him in 2018, seeing how he's able to grow and change in Ragnarok. I love everything they did in this game with this character, with this franchise, and I can't wait to see what else Sony Santa Monica has in store for us.
Yeah. Um, Guys, if you loved God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok as much as we did, let us know in the comments below. Did you have issues with it? Let us know. What was your favorite scene, favorite moment? Did you love the twist as much as we did? What is your build? What is your favorite build? I had a vitality and blessing of cooldown build because I used to use rune attacks all the time. I mean, what's your favorite build? Let us know what you love about this game. And if there's other games that you want us to cover, if we can get our hands on them and I can find time to play them, who knows? We'll cover them here too. But if you want to listen,
you just left the door open for Isaac to say Xenoblade.
Yes, he did. But then again, of course, it has to be a reality. But he can come back here and do Xenoblade. I mean, there's plenty of people that have done it, so we have an open door.
Let's do it.
But we have another episode on The Last of Us Part 1. Not the remake, but the original, but still The Last of Us. If you want to listen to it, we'll put the description down in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on this amazing episode of Shatter After. I'm Brandon Alvarado, Scarlet Fan. You can find me on Twitter at ScarletFan52, and you can find me and Mike at the Amateur Otaku Pod, also talking anime, manga, and all the awesome stuff there. We do a live stream every Sunday. It's going to move days, but don't worry, we're still going to do live stream and cover anime every week, so stay tuned for those changes.
We actually did an episode on the video games that deserve an anime, so we're plugging that one. That's going to be in the description, too, if you guys want to check that out.
It's going to happen. So, Mike, where can people find you, bro?
You can find me at Novice Cinephile everywhere, specifically youtube.com/Novice Cinephile, and on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at The Novice Cinephile.
Awesome. Have it awesome, guys. Keep watching movies, keep reading books, keep playing awesome games. Stay awesome. The shadow rises. Peace.
Later.